And then the sheriff goes on to be the really kind of awful big bad in Fast and Furious 4.
Oh god, that is him!
All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Screenplay Archaeology podcast. I'm your host, KiramidHead.
And hi, guys. I'm special guest for the day. I'm WhiskeyBrewer.
And I'm going to have to
cut from lovely UK.
And I'm going to have to cut like a few seconds of silence out of there. But today we're covering the John Spates drafts of Prometheus, which the ones that are out there are called Alien Engineers and Alien 01 Genesis, which just is a terrible title. Sounds like it's like you're expecting the next one called 02 Exodus, 03 Leviticus, and you get all the way to the end and you get Revelation.
Yeah, it's Ridley Scott in God mode, for the sounds of it.
And basically what these are one that was supposed to be a direct Alien prequel, and boy does it show. And interesting bit of background on this episode, this was supposed to be episode 5 way back in the day, and just for reasons I don't feel like getting into, it did not happen then, and it just kind of got delayed. Like, episode 4 and 5 both just kind of ended up happening much later for various reasons.
It's especially, we've waited 2 years to talk about these scripts, and we're finally here. We're finally giving the fans what they want.
And what's interesting about that is that at the time, I was just going to say, hey, we're going to do Alien Engineers, because at the time it felt like, well, that Prometheus sequel isn't happening anytime soon.
Yeah, and look where we are now.
Because at the time it was like, well, we'll do this one, and then we'll wait, because it seemed like there was traction on the Alien 3.5 thing, the Blomkamp film. It's like, we'll wait for that one to come, and we'll do the big Alien 3 episode, and then 2 years later, and it's completely flip-flopped.
It has. It's just like, well, it's Ridley taking control. Again, no matter all the stuff he's done in various films, when he wants to do something, man, does he take control, and he will wipe out anybody who gets in his way.
And we just got the news like yesterday about Ridley Scott saying he thinks the Alien 5 thing is not going to happen in his usual stammering, incoherent fashion.
Oh God! In his interviews, what can you expect?
Because
in between cigar puffs.
And what was hilarious about it was that the translation from the French article, I'm like, this is way more coherent than he usually is. And then someone pulled up the video interview where he actually said it. I'm like, oh, yep, that's Ridley.
Yeah. Ridley, you trying to hide from us? You can't escape.
Because he started talking that way around the time of Prometheus, and he just stopped giving a crap about pretending to be sane.
He has. He's just like, look, I've revealed the real me to the world. Get used to it.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, he's always been crazy if you listen to him talk, but he just really is just in his, like, I'm old, I'm gonna die soon, I don't care.
You will listen to what I have to say.
I will.
In the old days.
I will make The Counselor, and you will like it. And then nobody liked it. It was like, it's the best movie I made, damn it. But yeah, so basically what this is that we're going to be doing is that we're going to do the usual sort of, first spiel talking about the Alien franchise. And since I learned my lesson, since there are going to be other Alien and Predator episodes later on down the line, I've learned my lesson from the Batman episodes about not talking about everything in great detail all at once, because I learned that I'm going to have to do it 3 more times. It's going to get insanely...
That's true. And the Spider-Man stuff, don't forget, because I've done a couple on them.
Well, there's no more Spider-Man to do. We're done.
Oh, that's okay.
I mean, unless I do the Michael Chabon draft of 2, which is fairly different, but other than that, no, I got all the canon Spider-Man stuff out. Which I ended up having to do that by myself because of scheduling issues, which sucked.
Family scheduling.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick Alien and AVP sort of overview, including some of the side material that's supposed to be canon, but
you don't know what's canon with Alien and all that anymore.
Yeah, Alien's actually more convoluted than X-Men, if you can believe it.
Yeah, any universe Fox gets his hand on. Let's turn it round on you.
Because I mean, if Blomkamp's Alien 5 concept came out, like, they would have put all of the movies in a box set together, and they would have put a special menu system that tried to explain how they all made sense in the same continuity, because they did that with X-Men, and they kind of did it with the Alien anthology, where it's like, we're going to use the DVD menu to explain how an egg got onto Sulaco, and it's just the most bullshit thing ever.
That's right, and that was probably one of the main reasons I actually bought the Alien anthology box set, was to see what they did, and it answered nothing. It's just like, oh, we've detected something on the ship. Oh, okay.
It's on the drop ship. It's on the drop ship where it blatantly is not in the movie.
Mm.
But no, that's actually a really good box set to get because Alien and Aliens look amazing.
Oh yeah, and the fact they've got a few more of like the extras as well.
And they have in the uncut Alien 3 documentary,
which was the other reason I had to get the box set. Is just for the uncut version.
The extended Geiler interviews.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
We told him to follow.
Who's going to survive, me or Geiler, by the end of that?
We gave him a story outline to follow, but we didn't like the story. I'm saving that. Like, okay, basically what we're doing is I'm going to save like the majority of the Alien 3 discussion for an Alien 3 episode, because good Lord, is there a lot of stuff to talk about regarding that mess.
So much.
And
so much.
I'm going to save most of the AVP stuff for an AVP episode, and basically I'm saving all of the Predator discussion for the Rodriguez Predator script.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to keep you sane.
So to go into the Alien franchise, it started off with the 1979 film Alien, which of course is a classic.
Stone cold classic. It's one of, you can't really be topped in that style.
I mean, it's about the best you're ever going to do with an alien on a spaceship killing people.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, because it's so central. It's like haunted house, but it's also, oh God, well, it's just haunted house in space, but it's like a slasher movie, but it's not like Jason type of guy. It's something that you can actually fear. Yeah,
it's a monster.
Yeah, one hell of a monster.
That they do a really good job of framing, and it always kind of surprises me every time how they always show it like. The first couple of times you see the grown-up alien, they show it in massive close-up on its face, and that always surprises me for some reason.
Well, yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, it's always on the face, the front of the head, or little bits elsewhere. You don't often get a full view of it, or if you do, it's lit in such a way that you still don't quite see that much.
The only time where I think the alien looks kind of crap is that's the bit where he's going after Lambert, and he's like walking towards her. He looks like he's rolling at her on a skateboard, but other than that,
yeah, I think that comes down to the editing of that and the sort of things. It's the movement of the arms. He's doing like the Hawaii 5-0 swimming or something,
or like Bart Simpson on his skateboard. But yeah, that's not great. But other times when they show up moving, especially near the end, it looks perfectly fine. It's just that one shot where it's like, But
yeah,
the suit still looks great.
They couldn't use the crab walk stuff, maybe. So they decided we'll use this instead.
And what's great about it, it's basically a slasher movie. And I know that's going to piss off a lot of people when they hear that. It's going to be like, it's not a slasher movie, it's art. But it's
a slasher movie can't be art.
It's like top 5 slasher films ever because it's all these people getting picked off because, I mean, the characters are well-defined enough, although that's more... I mean, if you look at it on the page, the characters aren't much, but the actors really bring a whole other dimension to it. I mean, you got Harry Dean Stanton and Yaphet Kotto in there, for God's sake.
Oh, yeah. And they're just fantastic together.
I mean, those are my favorite characters, and it's a shame, because I love Harry Dean Stanton so much, and he dies first, really. Not counting John Hurt.
Yeah, not counting John Hurt, no. It is the sort of... And it's the characters that have their own foibles, which is why Brett gets picked off the way he does. He thinks he's doing something that makes sense, and when he says the line, it's the cat. It makes sense why he's let it go. And it's like, we've got to go get it, though, because it's going to show up again.
I love how the cat is basically the smartest character in the movie, too, in a way.
Oh, yeah, he sees it. No, the hell with this.
Yeah. And there's the one bit that kind of just makes the director's cut for me is when the alien's looking at it in the cat carrier, it adds in the bit where it just bitch slaps the thing across the room.
Yeah, I can't get at you, but I must do something. You son of a bitch.
And also, it's just such a shame that Harry Dean Stanton died so early. And maybe it was because the guy was kind of a crazy bastard in real life, so they gave him one of the smaller roles because, I mean, if you read like the behind the scenes stuff on Repo Man, like he was swinging a real baseball bat at people.
Oh God. He obviously had a whale of a time when he was filming anything.
He's always great. He always has like he's even in the Avengers for like 2 minutes, and it's memorable.
Is he in the Avengers?
Yeah, he's the guy when Bruce Banner wakes up on the ground after falling out of the helicarrier. He's the guy who's like, "Well, you can't fall down, big green and buck ass naked."
That's right. That is Harry Dean Stanton.
And then he's in the Arnold movie The Last Stand. In like the first 5 minutes, he gets his head blown off with a shotgun.
That's right, yeah.
But no, he's
memorable cameo. Most of his deaths involved in getting something for the head.
I just love the interplay between those two and them giving Ripley shit. You know, him and Parker giving Ripley shit.
Oh, when they're speaking to her and they're like,
"What?"
In the corridor, and it's with the gas and all that, the steam coming through, and it's like it's going to take us a few hours to fix it. She goes off, and then he just lifts the lever and it stops.
Yeah. It's the Scotty approach to engineering.
So what does this lever do? Yeah, it works.
But I mean, on the whole, it's a very creepy, scary film, and you have the H.R. Giger imagery, which really sort of falls into that. And it's interesting how that film was basically born from the Jodorowsky's Dune falling apart, because that was how O'Bannon and H.R. Giger first became acquainted.
That's right, yeah. It wasn't one of the other art designers who did the shit?
Oh, yeah, I believe I forgot Mebius did the ship design for oh yeah, and Chris Foss as well.
Yeah, I think that's where Dan O'Bannon, he met them all on while they were working on Dune, and like possibly he recommended them all, bring them in.
And then you get
that whole one designs the planet, the alien, one designs the ship, the other designs the outfit.
Yeah, Ron Cobb, I believe, designed the Nostromo.
That's right, yeah.
And I swear that ship looks like it was a prank someone designed to just, let's give you the most psychologically intimidating spaceship you can have.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, there's so many bits and bobs on it. But no,
we do want it horizontal. We wanted a cathedral in space.
But no, you have all that.
That's how Ridley describes it. It's like a cathedral in space.
That's Ridley for you. But no, I mean, the whole derelict ship thing is cool. And then, of course, the Jodorowsky's Dune thing actually comes back because Prometheus just wholesale lifts one of Giger's designs for that movie.
Yeah, oh God. Oh, it's the pyramid. That's it, the pyramid.
Which is not a pyramid, which is my biggest gripe with that movie, surprisingly.
Look at it, yeah. That's your biggest gripe.
Yeah, I know. That just annoys me because they keep saying pyramid when it's not a damn pyramid.
No. It's just like, you can't think of another word to describe it. Pyramid. Everyone knows what a pyramid is. Yeah, that's why you shouldn't be calling it a pyramid.
Yeah, and the thing is with the original Alien, everything about it is great. Everyone's giving a great performance. There's one thing about the film that bugs the shit out of me.
Yeah?
And that's Lambert. Because she is bitching and complaining before anything goes wrong. It's just like, shut up.
I think that's never... I always thought that was perfectly timed because it gave her all sort of things like she's she does complain before anything goes down, but half the time she has a right to complain. The audience.
I mean, it is true, but it's just kind of like, tone it down a little bit, guys. And the fact that Walter Hill and David Giler were saying, "Oh, she's the audience surrogate," I'm like, damn, you don't think very highly of your audience.
They really don't.
And you get to see Bilbo Baggins as an evil android, which is cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, until he gets his head off and he does the chicken dance.
Oh, yeah. The shots with his head off on the table are not great, because, like, you should have done a cutaway instead of just jump cutting from the model head to the real head.
Oh, God. That's even better.
Yeah,
when they finally when the head's on the table, and when they finally go to flamethrow it, the fact that the mold has shrunk. got this weird grin on it.
Now, of course, that whole subplot actually adds a bit of a plot hole into the movie, where it's like, the company sent a robot along to get an alien that they couldn't possibly have known was there.
And so that subplot that Geiler and Hill wrote into the film.
Yeah, because in their version of the film, it wasn't an alien, it was a company installation, and they created a genetic beast or something. I always
they were fighting O'Bannon for the rights to who wrote the film and all this as well.
Yeah, that's a whole backstory. Maybe I'll do their draft somewhere down the line if it's interesting enough. But then you get...
Would definitely be something to have a look at, yeah.
But what's weird is that, because for years, because I saw the theatrical cut a couple of times when I was fairly young, and then for years I only saw the director's cut, because that's what I had on DVD, and I just didn't bother with the theatrical, because in the director's cut they take out the line where they say that Ash was specifically put aboard the ship. So I just kind of assumed that the company saw that there was some sort of, beacon there, and then they just kind of homed in on it, and, that's what, the whole crew expendable thing is that they would have been interested in this thing anyways, regardless of if they knew anything. But then years later, I watched the theatrical cut again, and it's like, oh wait, they implanted a spy to find something they couldn't know was there.
They swapped Ash out for the normal science officer who Dallas has been with on so many missions, that a few days before they went out, they swapped him, or something.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, that's weird, and I guess Ridley is going to explain it in Covenant 2-3 or something like that.
Or Awakening, or whatever he calls the next one, yeah.
Well, we have Covenant, like the Ark of the Covenant, so we're going to have the Shankara Stones, and then the Holy Grail.
That would be something, yeah. Sean Connery comes out of retirement to make a cameo as head engineer.
I was actually wondering how awesome it would have been if Sean Connery played Wayland in Prometheus, but...
Oh, that would actually have been really interesting casting, actually.
David has no soul.
Piece of fun I never had.
But no, and then you just see Harrison Ford going, ugh. Vickers as played by Harrison Ford.
Yeah. That's for blasphemy.
And then, of course, that covers Alien pretty much. I mean, it's a simplistic film that works.
Oh, yeah.
I will say I do think that the alien's intelligence is often overblown by the fans, because I'm like, fucking hell, it gets stuck in the wall at the end of the movie. It only gets out because Ripley shoots it with gas.
Well, yeah, that's right, because it's amongst all the pipes on the Narcissus. But a lot of them say, one final bit on it. I remember reading somewhere that a lot of people were saying that the alien crawled into the pipes to die.
Yeah, Ridley Scott said something about that.
Is it another Ridley thing, is it?
Yeah, I think it is.
That makes so much sense in that regard.
That was the concept, because it crawled to the pipes to die, so technically Ripley didn't have to do anything in that scene.
Yeah, she could have just climbed into the pod, or the cryo. She would have been fine. But then again, when you get to Aliens, they would have found the body, and it would have been a completely different series.
Yeah, it would have been a completely different movie. They would have been like, hell yes, let's go find this thing.
This thing looks awesome. We want a live one.
It would have been like, oh, damn, the colonists are boned.
Yeah.
And, of course, that brings us to Aliens, which, interestingly enough, took 7 years to come out.
Yeah, well, because initially they didn't actually plan on making a sequel, did they? They planned to have it as a one-off, but then Geiler and Hill had an idea. And
then, of course, this is despite what Ridley Scott says about him wanting to do the Space Jockey spin-off even back then.
Yeah. He's been saying that for years, no matter any interview, even if it's about something else. I really want to do the Space Jockey spin-off.
That's Ridley for you. But no, so they bring in James Cameron, who had... At the time they hired him, Terminator wasn't out yet, and...
Oh, they were still making it, I think.
Yeah, they were still making it because Arnold had to, do the two De Laurentiis films back-to-back to get out of his contract.
That's right, yeah.
Because Destroyer basically took precedence.
Due to the original contract he signed on Barbarian or something.
Yeah, and he didn't want to do any more because of Dino's nonsense, and Dino's like the Italian Ridley in a sense.
Oh, a film made by Dino De Laurentiis and Ridley Scott.
How
bad would that have been?
It would have been terrible because there would have been no budget.
It was just an all visual. Yeah, that would have been the Space Jockey spin-off. Hilo Entis and Ridley Scott.
Yes, and so Aliens is, I mean, what the hell else are we going to say about Aliens? It hasn't been said a million times. It's awesome.
It is. It's fantastic. Vietnam in space.
Look into my eye.
Look into my eye, yeah.
Apone went out way too early.
He did, but he also... Oh, no, I was about to think he was the last Marine from that thing to go, but Drake was.
Yeah.
Apone was like, what? I can't hear anything. And then suddenly he looks up and it goes, hello.
And then Apone, they find him and he's cocooned to the wall at the end.
Did they actually find Apone at the end?
I think she walks through when she's looking for Newton. You see a brief shot of Apone and a couple of the others.
Oh, I didn't. I've never actually noticed that.
Or was that part? I can't remember if that was part of the deleted. And I just watched the movie yesterday. If it was part of the deleted scene where she finds Burke,
it might have been part of that.
It might. Yeah, I think it might have been part of that, and I just got my wires crossed.
Possibly.
But you do get the line from Hudson, man. Sergeant Tetrick ain't dead, man.
Oh God. Yeah, that's right. They're still alive. Their life signs are really low, but they ain't dead, man. Bill Paxton's Hudson was perfect.
Yes, he's a character who, with a lesser actor and worse dialogue, could have been insufferable, but he's amazing.
He just adds that sort of cocky attitude to it.
It was, like I said, if it was a lesser actor and lesser dialogue, he would have been insufferable, but no, he's awesome, and what makes him work is that even though he is kind of the whiner he does when push comes to shove, he makes himself useful, and he goes out like a pro. He
does. He just goes... He knows it's coming, but he goes for it, and it's wall-to-wall swearing as he's going out as well.
He's just shooting them like he goes...
Aliens on TV, and they always edited out the swearing. They made the pulse rifles louder, so you can tell he's saying something, but you can't hear it over the gunfire.
Well,
then I got the DVD, and it, F you. It's like, gee, oh, bloody hell.
Well, that's less clumsy than, say, what they did with Scarface, where they changed, this town is a great big pussy waiting to be fucked to a great big chicken waiting to be plucked.
Oh, the awful, it's like, the airplane edits, what they call them.
Yeah, where they cut out all the bad stuff that happens to airplanes and stuff.
And I just wait for something like United to accidentally have Alive as their in-flight movie.
or United 93.
Yeah.
But no, Aliens, once again, that's a film that's been so discussed and so picked apart, where it's like, everybody knows everything about it. One of the things I like, though, is that the facehugger gets a little more time in the spotlight than it does in the original. Like, you actually get to see it do a little more.
Yeah, oh yeah, that is a fantastic sweet sequence in the med bay. Especially with the way it's lit, the rain, well, not the rain, but
the sprinklers.
The sprinklers, yeah, and just the way it hit. And it's really creepy because the movement's really spidery, and it's just like, I'm a massive arachnophobe, and that's just like, oh, God.
Oh, man. You just made me think of some of those spider alien toys that Kenner would put out, or something like that.
Oh, yeah, well, Kenner just went for it.
Yeah.
After Aliens came out, when they did the toys, because it's like, the mantis alien.
I had a cobra alien.
You had a cobra one. I had a gorilla one when I was younger.
But the film's great. Like, I love the way the aliens move in that, because they're constantly crawling around and jumping.
Oh yeah, yeah. The movement is just so much more like the way the suits were done. Obviously, the stuntmen could do so much. Because if I remember rightly, the actor who played Private Crow, was actually a trained stuntman. Who actually after then went on to work on Doctor Who. He was actually one of the guys in the suits, if I remember reading rightly.
Oh, okay.
So it would be an interesting thing. You could say the alien that has him in was the alien that burst out of Crow on the wall or something. It would be one way to say it.
And then, of course, the Queen was a great addition. It just looks great, and that whole fight at the end is amazing.
That is just perfect, yeah. Just two soccer mums kicking ass or something.
Yeah.
What did you say about my child?
I said your child ain't even an honor student. But, and then, like, okay, so Aliens is amazing. Everybody knows that. Yeah. And then they want it. It's like like with Alien, it's like, no, we don't want a sequel of Aliens. It's like, we need a sequel immediately.
We don't care how we get it. We want it now.
And then they spent 6 years, and like I said, we're not going to go too in-depth on Alien 3, but they spent 6 years just tossing different scripts around, coming up with ideas, because Geiler and Hill didn't know what the hell they wanted.
No, they come up with an idea, get the idea, then change the idea, because they thought something they thought was better. And
they basically let Sigourney Weaver run the madhouse. It just ended up with, honestly, I'm surprised, David Fincher had a career after that movie. Like, that's one of the great comebacks in cinema history.
That is, he's done so well since, I think it was really like Seven that sort of kept his dream alive in that regard, because otherwise he probably would have just gone back to the music videos.
Well, he almost gave up. Like, there was a period where he wouldn't even look at scripts after Alien 3, and then 7 came along.
And I think that would put the fire back in anybody that's seen that script.
Oh, yeah, and he even got the script which had the altered safe ending on it. And he actually got the original ending on accident.
That's right, yeah, I remember hearing that. They were meant to send him the safe one, sent him the original, he loved it, and said, we're doing this one, I want this.
And so Alien 3 is one of those weird movies where I'd call it a interesting experiment that doesn't quite work, because it's trying to be, a horror movie again. It's trying to be this big, bleak, finale. Yeah. But it has a dark tone that it basically contrives the hell out of to get going on right after Aliens, because, of course, it has to take place immediately after Aliens. These guys have never heard of a time skip.
No. Or if they have, it's in slasher movies where he kept the ending of the previous film and then 2 years later pops up on screen and it's an entirely new set of characters.
And so the movie is because they didn't know what they wanted, and they were only really making the movie because they'd already spent so much money on pre-production at that point.
And they were building sets from a previous draft.
Yeah, they were building sets for the Wooden Planet, which was there to service Vincent Ward's monk fetish.
I like bold guys.
Yeah, and the only reason Ripley's in the film is because one of the heads at Fox went, well, we have to have Ripley in there. And so they had to get her back, they had to offer Sigourney Weaver a truckload of money, and they basically had to give her control over the direction of it, which just kind of sabotaged everything. And it's got
she got an executive producer credit for it, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, she got that certain thing, so she was just under Geiler and Hill on the totem pole.
Yeah, and it basically, the film was like, it was doomed to be a mess. Like, they contrived so hard to get an alien in the film, and it's like, you could just find an alien somewhere else. They can't only be found in the derelict.
Exactly, you could have had another ship.
I'm like, you're on a
ship crash land somewhere.
But I mean, like, the prison is in the ruins of a mining colony. They could find it at the bottom of a mine or something.
Oh, that would be perfect, like an almost dead hive under the planet, or in the middle of the planet, and, yeah, then you get the unseen queen face hugger egg or something.
Yeah. But then you just have a bunch of nonsense that no matter which cut of the movie you watch, it doesn't really make any sense about, there's this face hugger that you only ever see one face hugger, but there's two aliens, and you only see one egg. Where the hell did the egg come from?
So many, like trying to fix the continuity of that is, even though it was the first Alien film I saw, I was probably about 8 or 9 when I saw it, and yeah, considering how bloody it is, I always still enjoy it, even though, there are many things wrong with it. But if I want to watch an Alien film, oddly, Alien 3 is the one I will always go back to.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, because there's bits of the film I like, but the whole thing is kind of off-putting. I don't mind giving it a bleaker tone, but they do the lazy, shitty screenplay writing thing of, you want to make it dark, let's kill the kid.
Yeah.
It's like that comes back with the Strauss brothers later on.
Yeah.
And oh boy, that comment's gonna piss people off that I put Alien 3 in the same league as Requiem.
Yeah, even Alien 3 haters will go, it's not that bad, but it's not as bad.
It's nowhere near as bad as Requiem is, but we'll get to that. But yeah, because I want to save most of the Alien 3 discussion for that episode, I'll say one last thing, and that as far as the original Alien series goes, not counting Prometheus, because that kind of throws it off.
Yeah.
With the exception of Kane and Ash, whom I don't count because he's a robot, it seems like the entire British population of this galaxy is on Fury.
It is, yeah. You got anybody who worked in theatre in Britain, they're in the film. One of them, Clive Mansell, at that point, he was more famous for being in Casualty, which is a long-running British series. He played a nurse in that, and that was his biggest role up until that point.
And then you got the guy from American Werewolf in London as the warden, and then you have the guy who he wasn't Doctor Who yet at the time.
The great Paul McGann.
And of course you have Charles Dance, who sadly gets killed off less than halfway through the movie.
And even Guyler says we shouldn't have killed him off that early.
Yeah, because he's the only really well-developed character in the whole thing.
Yeah, and then of course Dylan, who's probably the only one of the few American prisoners.
It's like him and the rapist guy, whom I could. Fun fact: when he does his self-sacrifice thing, the first time I watched the movie, I had forgotten who he was. So it's like, wait a minute, who is this guy? Why is this important?
Everyone said that because everyone was bold, so you couldn't tell who was who.
But he's the actor whom I think he's American, and I know him best from popping up in Creepshow 2 covered in red face and a ridiculous wig playing a Native American.
Oh, God. The old wooden top.
Yes, he's the guy who's like, this hair is going to get me paid and laid, and then it's like, no, that shitty wig is not going to get you paid and laid, dipshit.
Well, actually, there are two more Americans, and it's Boggs and Rains who go off with Gollett.
I don't remember those guys at all.
It's when they're doing the search around the tunnels or something.
So they're basically background characters.
Yeah, they're the ones with when Gollett first sees the alien. They're the ones who get killed.
Oh, okay, that scene.
Yeah.
Okay. That movie.
The other two Americans in the film.
All the scenes of that movie kind of run together for me because everything in that movie is orange and dark brown.
Then again, Aliens was blue and
true. True, but the sets were a little more distinct. It's like,
yeah, that's true. Actually,
and also Alien 3, for one last note, does have Pete Postlethwaite in it.
Oh yeah, legend.
Who would go on to be the only exceptional part of the Lost World.
Yeah, he was the best thing about that film, actually, yeah.
Yes, he was. That's the only reason I go back to that movie anymore is because of him.
See, I go back to Paul McGann because he's my doctor.
I meant Lost World.
Oh, Lost World. Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
Man.
And the fact that, brief bit Lost World, all the deleted scenes for his character as well.
Oh, yeah, because Spielberg thought he was too much of a nice guy.
He's like, oh, thank you, Spielberg.
And then, okay, so Alien 3 comes out. I don't think it does terribly well, and everyone goes like, wow, you guys kind of ripped off the ending of T2. Which
was being made at the same time.
It was a coincidence, of course, but...
Yeah.
But, I mean, it seems like they weren't gonna do an Alien movie, and then they went, hey, let's get Sigourney Weaver back, even though it doesn't make any sense to do Alien Resurrection, which is foreshadowing what Cameron's probably gonna do with Avatar 2, bringing her back.
Probably, actually, yeah.
And Resurrection is just... I don't want to say too much about it, because I don't know what the fuck to say about that movie. It's just a weird, movie?
Somebody once described it to me as a French buddy movie.
Yeah, it's like a French buddy movie, but it also feels a lot like a silly late 90s blockbuster.
It's a French art house director trying to make his first Hollywood film. So he's trying to combine so much into it, and it just becomes slightly just disjointed, even with some brilliant script elements from Joss Whedon.
I do think, though, that Joss Whedon maybe wasn't the greatest fit for the material.
Well, I would love to have seen the version of his original treatment, which had the clone be of Mute.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. But yeah, it's a film that's just kind of doomed from, Fox's creepily Ripley fetish, which once again continues on into the present day with shoving her in the novels and referencing her in the video game and all that.
Yeah, oh god. That's right, because she features in one of the 3 books with, set in between Alien and Aliens. And
Out of the Shadows.
Is Out of the Shadows, that's it. And then they do the convenient mind wipe or something.
Ooh, the X-Men Origins, that shit.
Oh god, they did. They did so bad. They did so hard.
Yeah, and then they just shove her daughter into isolation because you have to have a Ripley connection.
Yeah.
But
then another one, I think it's River of Pain. No, it's not River of Pain, it's Sea of Sorrows, I think, which is set so far in the future. It's one of Ripley's descendants somehow, considering Amanda Ripley, according to Aliens, didn't have any kids.
Yeah. And also, to get back to Resurrection, a film is just messed up when it features Brad Dourif, Ron Perlman, and Michael Wincott, and it's just terminally uninteresting.
Yeah. Oh god. But Ron Perlman was brilliant in that, but then again, he could tell he was just having a laugh while doing the film.
Yeah, and so was Brad Dourif, but Brad Dourif, his whole sequence in that movie where he's like making kissy faces at the aliens is just like...
And then doing the teeth, it's like, look at my molars. This seems to be what he was doing. Or...
That was him picking up a paycheck.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say two things I actually kind of like about the movie. The bad guy getting killed by getting the chest burster popping through his head.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Called that the toothpaste sequence, I think, at one point.
And I also the toothpaste sequence, I think, is the newborn getting sucked out through the window.
Oh, that's probably true, yeah.
And
that makes sense, actually.
And I kind of like the design of the newborn, even if the weird make-out scene it has with Ripley is just, what?
Yeah, that is a strange bit.
And the fact that it was supposed to have both a penis and a vagina, but then they digitally removed it.
Yeah, so, oh my god, we can't show this. We've gone too far.
It's like, what did you expect? You hired a French director.
Yeah, you expect a gratuitous genital shot.
But I mean, I do think the design of the newborn is nice and creepy, but the film as a whole is just, it's not used well, and then the film as a whole just kind of is,
Yeah, it pops up too late to be seen as something too dangerous.
And they try to back that up by having it punch the Queen's head off.
Yeah.
Which was ridiculous.
That was like, you're not my mother. Yes, I am.
Like, I mean, it's saying something that when an AVP movie treats the Queen with more dignity than Resurrection did. It's really bad.
That is quite strange. Yeah, because in AVP, the Queen is in it so much more. A lot more than I actually remembered.
Yeah, it's weird because it gets the big thing where it's running around like a T-Rex at the end because I guess they had leftover Jurassic Park CGI.
Yeah. We'll just extend the arms a bit, add a crest on the back of the head, and there you go. There's the Queen.
And so yeah, after Resurrection, I guess they figured, well, we don't know what the hell to do with this series anymore. It took a while. It took 7 years for AVP to finally come out, and they gave it to Paul W.S. Anderson, whom, if they had given it to him in like 97 or something, it might have been fairly decent, but it's post-Resident Evil Paul Anderson, but he contracted a look at my hot wife syndrome. Yeah,
but if they'd done it after Event Horizon, it would have been a completely different ballgame.
But yes, AVP is, like, it's...
I did like AVP. There were elements that were good.
There are some decent elements, but it's just kind of like, as a whole package, it's just kind of bland.
That's true, with the American football size predators.
And the predators are treated like absolute crap in that film.
Well, you get 3 of them, and you wipe 2 of them out so quickly.
I will say it does deliver on the AVP part of the title.
Oh, yeah, it does. It does, yeah, boxing / wrestling, Muay Thai. Fights,
but I mean, you can tell Anderson only really gave a shit about Alien because the Predators just feel obligatory and they don't even reference any Predator stuff in it.
No, it's just like they're there rather than, oh, this sounds vaguely similar to what happened in 97 in LA. You know,
yeah, I keep forgetting that movie was set in the then near future because it looks so 1990. But saving Predator discussion for a Predator episode.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Because it seems like the big hurdle they ran into with both of the AVP movies was, the time frame, because Predator has always been a contemporary thing, regardless of what Shane Black has said about Predators.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
But I don't think it's insurmountable. Then AVP Requiem for a Franchise came out.
Yeah, and then that completely flatlined the whole thing for years.
For 5 years until Prometheus. 3 years until Predators came out.
That's true, but it's like they needed to give it a shot in the arm, and...
But yeah, AVP Requiem, or AVP Rectum, as I've sometimes heard it called, is just... My God, is that an ungodly awful film.
Well, yeah, there is nothing good you can say about it, except that it got made. But then again, that's not good in that regard.
Well, I can say that Wolf is kind of cool, but that doesn't change the fact that the movie is just... How do you make a film and just forget to light anything?
Oh, yeah. It's like all the bulbs blew as soon as the cameras were turned on.
It's like they went, well, we have to cut the budget somehow. Let's throw out the lights.
Yeah.
And the aliens look like proper dog shit in it. As much as the Pred alien was hyped up, it's kind of an anticlimax.
It is, because it looks nothing like the Drayman design, or even what was in AVP Jewel, the comic. That looks so much better.
Yeah, and it just doesn't really do much, and they make it a queen for whatever reason that can throat fuck people.
Yeah, well, just a brief bit on it, because we don't want to spoil too much before doing an episode on it. The fact that the Pred alien wasn't even meant to be in most of the film. In one of the scripts, it gets killed in the initial crash.
Oh yeah, that's right, I forgot about that. I've not actually read that Shane Salerno script. I've heard it described as, like, the worst of, like, any of the Alien or Predators.
Which, considering the film we got afterwards, it's not a surprise.
Ugh. But no, that's a film where, literally, you do not have any clue about who any of these characters are. They're just blank slates.
And if anyone dies, you don't really see how they die.
And their names are all just references to other characters.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we get Dallas.
And then the sheriff goes on to be the really kind of awful big bad in Fast and Furious 4.
Oh God, that is him!
Yes, it is him.
Well, at least it was a step up for him.
I don't know, Fast and Furious 4 is the least of that series for me.
Yeah, Tokyo Drift for me, on that one.
Tokyo Drift I enjoy just because it's a ridiculous Tokyo set movie that has a Sonny Chiba cameo.
Yeah, that's the Sonny Chiba.
But I mean, Fast and Furious 4 is more boring than anything, because it's like, yeah, we got the whole cast back, but Michelle Rodriguez has to go fuck off.
Yeah,
and she's gonna...
we missed her, we'll bring her back next time.
And like, the single most memorable scene of that movie is Vin Diesel doing, like, his Sherlock Holmes thing, where he's looking at, like, oil stains on the road. And...
Oh, that scene was... Well, when you consider Fast and Furious as mostly absurd anyway, yeah, that scene is just like, he's just looking at... He's doing his best Benedict Cumberbatch impression, or looking at the road and visualizing what's going on, or what happened. It's like, how could you tell?
Which, to be fair, that does get kind of hand-waved, but it turns out that, oh, she's not dead, she has amnesia, but whatever, that's a whole different series.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, worst part of AVP Requiem for a franchise, I keep saying that, is, for me, by far, is the main guy at the end doing the really terrible line reading of, get to the chopper!
Oh, God. Well, that, and there's also the maternity ward sequence.
Oh, that's bad, but... You see, that's also what because Alien 3 tried to force, like, dark, bleak, and edgy. This does the same thing, ramped up times 1,000, and that one of the first kills in the movie is a kid who gets face-hugged, and then you get the pregnancy burster, which I don't even understand how the damn thing could pump 5 fucking embryos in so it can get the mom and the triplets.
Yeah, I know, that is... it. I don't know, but then again... They changed what the Pred alien could do, seemingly page by page, or scene by scene of that film.
And also, I have to point out, despite what the Silent Hill games may tell you, the throat is not connected to the uterus.
Yeah, it's just awful.
Yeah, rectum. The rectum. It's called rectum because it's a big piece of shit. But and Requiem for what?
Yeah, it's probably obviously the random title generator.
I mean, it could have been worse. They could have called it AVP Revelation.
Oh, don't. Oh.
Or AVP, well, Resurrection was
AVP
already...
Generations or something.
AVP first...
They're going to make Star Trek film titles for it.
Yeah, Wolf is going to end up in the Nexus.
Yeah. AVP, Wrath of Wolf.
Vengeance for Wolf. That's better than both AVP movies combined, and that's saying something. But yeah, it kind of went into hibernation after that, and then, Predators happened, which covers that half of the franchise, and then suddenly it's like, we're doing an Alien prequel, and Ridley Scott is producing, and some guy who directed commercials for him was going to direct it, and then he fell out, and Ridley was like, no, I'm going to direct it myself, mate.
This is my baby. I'm going to make the film I wanted to make all those years ago.
And it ends up being Prometheus, which... I like the film okay, but it's just called enough really stupid things in it that takes it down from what could have been a great, interesting science fiction film, too.
Yeah, it does, again, it's going to be like my stock phrase. It does have enjoyable moments. And does have some really good performances. Michael Fassbender does.
He steals the whole movie.
He does. And he doesn't really show much emotion. It's just him, but he does own it.
I was just going to say...
Also bringing him back for Covenant, as multiple people.
Oh, it basically seems like it's going to be David the movie, almost.
Yeah, David squared.
Yeah, one thing I do want to see from the Covenant sequels is I want to see, because he's David 8. I want to see what David 1 through 7 looked like, and I want one of them to be a working Joe with a Fassbender face.
That would be an interesting sequence or something. Maybe you'll see that when you have, flashbacks or whatever to David on Earth. Or something.
With Guy Pearce showing up again.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, it's
enough for the first one. I want to be back.
But no, it's an interesting film. But there's just enough things that, I think the Alien connection obviously hurts it because they should have just written it out almost completely instead of kind of keeping a bunch of monsters in it that are sort of alien-like, and then just some of the shit edits Ridley made to that film, once you know that there's supposed to be a whole sequence with the engineer and the lifeboat at the end, you cannot unsee the awful jump cut.
No. And then the way after Shaw gets rid of the trilobite, and then the editing between that and Fifield going nuts in the hangar bay, which was meant to be two completely different scenes in different parts of the film.
Yeah, it was supposed to be quite a bit later, the Fifield stuff.
Because it was to explain why, she's not there because she's recuperating after what's happened before.
Yeah, and what's hilarious about that is the fact that they only reshot that stuff and then moved it earlier because they wanted to give Idris Elba something more to do. And all he really does is he gets in the elevator and then the thing's already dead and he's flamethrowing it.
The door opens, it's on the floor. Oh, yeah, oh, look, I'm here. Yeah, the captain has saved the day.
But no, I mean, Idris Elba's great. Michael Fassbender is great. I mean, Noomi Rapace is fine, but she gets some of Lindelof's worst dialogue in the film.
Yeah, she's worse affected by his take on it, or what Ridley said his take on it had to be.
Because it's the whole I choose to believe thing. That should not have replaced the exposition scene. That should have been the line that ended the movie.
Yes.
Instead of saying, you don't understand because you're just a fucking robot, which actually that's the scripted line. That's not what she says in the movie. No. Instead of saying that, he says, if David says, why do the answers matter? She should say, because that's what I choose to believe. That would have taken it full circle instead of having it shoved in to basically avoid an exposition scene.
Yeah. That would have been perfect ending to it. Yeah. That would have worked so much better.
But I mean, Charlize Theron is good in the movie, but her character is completely wasted.
It is. It's we got a big name actress for this role. What do we do?
Drop a ship on her.
Drop a ship on her. The Prometheus school of running away from things.
Which, to be fair, if you watch the movie, there's debris falling all around them, so...
It does make sense, but it's the fact that Shaw manages to run to the side, and it's she's thinking, no, I'm Charlize Theron, I can outrun this.
No, she, runs slightly to the side, and then commando rolls the rest of the way.
That's true, yeah, a bit of a jump, a bit of a roll.
I'm like, this is Furiosa here, she should be able to get away. Honestly, what I think they should have done is they should have kept the extra scene with Yannick and Vickers on the ship where he's talking to her, which is a way better explanation of how this place is a military base than what we... Because that also strengthens their relationship, and she should have stayed on the ship with him at the end. Prometheus, interesting film, and quite a few issues. I actually do really like the engineers. I know that's a controversial choice, making them big, bald humans.
Rather than large tapirs or elephants.
Yes, yeah. Which, ironically enough, because, there was almost a human space jockey in the original movie if Geiler and Hill had their way. So maybe they looked at Prometheus and went, that's what it should have been all along.
Yeah, let's put our stamp on it that we should have had in the original film, yeah.
And so Prometheus is interesting. And Alien Covenant, I will say I'm leery of it, but I mean, it does look interesting.
Visually, from what we've seen in the trailers, it does look stunning.
And I won't say too much about it, but that one shot they show of the engineers, dear Lord, do they look like dog shit. I mean, it looks like it's interesting. I hope it's good. I mean, it does seem kind of like it's a bit of a soft reboot of Prometheus. Which
seems to be the Fox thing, because, particularly with the new X-Men film, they're referring to that as another soft reboot.
Oh, which one is that? Is that Dark Phoenix?
Dark Phoenix, which was originally going to be called Supernova, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Super.
I guess it's going to be a soft reboot.
I'm assuming they dropped Supernova because of the implications of that movie's title.
Possibly,
It's another Walter Hill science fiction film, even though his name's not on it.
Yeah, it was for a bit, and then he walked away.
He walked away, they brought in the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 director, and then Francis Ford Coppola blacked up Robin Tunney for a sex scene.
That's right, yeah.
That's a whole other story, which is hilarious. Yeah, so Covenant looks interesting. I mean, the other semi-canon elements of the franchise, like you have the whole Colonial Marines thing, which is just such nonsense.
Oh God.
Oh, God, that game. I watched the full Let's Play of the main campaign and then watched the cutscenes for Stasis Interrupted. It's like, this is the most bullshit retcon-y plot ever.
That's when when Fox and all that were trying to say, oh, don't worry, this game is canon. And then when people hated on it so much. Oh, it's not canon anymore. It's a what-if scenario.
And basically what Stasis Interrupted does is that one of the scenes I actually kind of like in Alien 3 is I kind of like the self-sacrifice at the end. The way that cutscene plays out in Stasis Interrupted completely robs it of any gravity. It just becomes hilarious.
No.
Yeah, basically you have Evil Bishop going, no! Then you have Hicks walk in the background and go,
I guess he didn't earning his paycheck.
I guess he just did not give that much of a shit about Ripley.
Yeah, he cared more about the original Bishop, probably.
And then you have Isolation, which I have played in part. I've yet to finish it. Well-crafted game. I feel like it's a little too relentless for its own good because it feels like you can never just sit still and figure stuff out because the alien will always find you.
Yeah, because that's something to do with the AI interface or something about the alien that any playthrough you do, it'll never be in the same place twice. It will pop out from somewhere that you won't expect.
And it gets to a point where it pops out of a vent and I go and hide and it immediately finds me. Okay.
It learns. You jump in a locker one playthrough, you see. Jump in the locker on the next playthrough. Rips off the door and gets you.
Well, no, I went with the beginning of the medical tower scene. I heard it come out, I went into an office, hid under a desk, and it immediately found me.
Oh, God. Maybe your feet were sticking out or something.
Or maybe, it's not blind and it can see under the table.
That's true. Well, that goes back to the whole, is there a skull underneath the dome sort of thing.
Oh, God. Don't start that. But no, one funny thing about the medical tower is that I ran the hell away from it, ran right into a group of guys who were going to try and shoot me, and then the alien ran right into them and then killed them for me.
That would have made a brilliant YouTube video, I think.
Oh, it's in my streaming. I live streamed the game.
Oh no!
When I was playing it, from what I gathered, I got about halfway through before I had to stop playing. For reasons I can't really get into at the moment, but basically, if I have to pick it up, I'm gonna have to start playing it again from the beginning.
Oh no!
And I'm contemplating dropping from normal to easy just to kind of give my
Get
nerves
past
some
that bit.
relaxation.
To actually finish the game.
Also, fuck the androids. I mean, they're really cool looking, but they're everywhere.
Yeah, that is one strange thing. There just seems to be more than there should be on the station. Yeah, maybe that's a Fox decision or something that the game makers had to deal with.
Well, no, the Fox decision was making, the character Amanda Ripley.
That's right, yes. Searching for her mother.
Which, I thought was kind of funny when you find the Nostromo's black box, which somehow survived that massive explosion.
Oh, yeah, like the nuclear explosion in space with all that mineral ore.
Yeah, and she finds it, and then it's just staticky.
Pointless plot point.
And so I guess that's Alien up to date.
Yeah, I think we're there actually. Yeah.
And it's been a long, strange trip, as every hippie in the world has ever said.
Yeah, every Grateful Dead fan has believed.
And we just time to dive right into Alien Engineers.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe, the fourth draft, like a revision of the fourth draft.
I think so. Yeah. Because it definitely seems like there's been quite a progression up until this point.
Because there were 6 drafts, and the last one was Alien Zero. So I'm guessing it was Engineers, 01 Genesis, and then Zero. And of course, it's written by John Spates, who was a newcomer at the time who got the job based on the fact I really liked his script for Passengers.
And that itself was a great film, because that was one of the Black List or something, one of the greatest unproduced films at the time.
Although I've seen some really shitty scripts on that list, but I haven't seen the movie. I mean, it just came out. I was about to get it on DVD, but I went, no. I mean, I got to rewatch Prometheus for the episode, and I got season 2 of Rome coming in the mail, so yeah, Passengers got sacrificed. But I want to see it just because I want to see, the film that the PC police started attacking the second it came out.
Yeah, oh god, yeah. Well, they've been attacking everything at the moment, so...
And he also wrote a script called Shadow 19, which I've not read, which I have 2 versions of. And he had a story credit on Doctor Strange. The story of how he got that job was basically that Scott Derrickson was already hired on to direct, and he wanted to write the script, but Marvel scheduled it in such a way that he had to get to work on pre-production right away. So Spates wrote the first draft, and then Derrickson and Cargill dropped in to rewrite it, basically.
Yeah. And
he also wrote the first draft of the new Mummy movie that's out next month, which I have it. I've not read it. I've heard it's awful.
Oh, makes him sound like a flash in the pan sort of writer.
A little bit.
Oh god.
Although, so yeah, Alien Engineers. Interestingly enough, before this version, apparently the original plot was they go to LV-426 and they find the derelict and the eggs on the derelict. And eventually they introduced a pyramid next to the derelict, and eventually they made it so that the derelict was the Juggernaut, and it takes off and then crashes at the end. Which, I'd like to read those versions, but I feel like this is a better concept than just, we're gonna find the derelict again.
Yeah, this one makes sense as a sort of prequel, considering, that's what they wanted to make. This version makes more sense in how they did it in that regard.
Yep, and now the brief overall plot synopsis of this thing is going to sound basically the same as Prometheus. It's, you have, in this draft, she's called Jocelyn Watts, and her colleague and lover, who's now Martin Holloway instead of Charlie, they discover evidence of a star map which proves that, we had these things called the Engineers who came to Earth and created humanity and influenced its development, and then they disappeared. And they convinced Wayland to fund this basically field trip out into space where they're going to go find this planet and see what happened. And they touched down on LV-426 from the original films, and they find a bunch of pyramids, and inside they find, the remains of the engineer civilization and eventually, the alien.
Yeah, because you have multiple facehugger variations spread around the place.
And when I say they eventually show up, I really do mean eventually, because you don't really get any alien imagery until like 70 pages into the 119-page script.
Yeah, it is very much like the back half of the film before we actually get Alien in the script.
And it all feels a tad random, too.
Well, yeah.
But no, I mean, to start off from the beginning, we get a very similar opening to the film where you have the engineers showing up on Earth, 12,000 BC, it says here, and you see, basically what happens in the film, except some differences. And interestingly enough, in Engineers, the Engineer spaceship it's not described, and in O1 Genesis, it's a pyramid. And I find that interesting because I remember Lindelof mentioning that in his draft it was the horseshoe-shaped ship from the original movie. And then Ridley Scott decided to change that to the flying saucer thing that you see in Prometheus.
That's right, yeah, which goes from vertical to horizontal and then just flies off.
And of course, I don't think Ridley Scott ever explained his logic on that. Like, the nearest thing I can come across is, well, of course, if you're going on a scientific trip, you're not going to take the bomber.
Oh, no. You are going to have the most streamlined version to go.
And so here we get, the deleted scene from Prometheus where you have the engineer elders sort of, talk to the sacrificial engineer, and they give him, the box full of stuff. And he's described here as being naked, and he has underpants in the film, so I guess we were spared, the full-on sight of engineer penis.
Yeah, we were spared the newborn remake.
And so he takes, instead of, being like a cup full of goo, it's a black cake, which he bites into, and then these weird scarab things come out, and basically take him apart and eat up his DNA, and then they go and fly out across the planet. And you see
have the savage woman who's on the top of a cliff watching it all happen.
And she gets bit by one of the scarabs and then injects her with the human DNA.
And then you see her eyes start to change or something. And as a visual, I think that would have made a lot better rather than seeing DNA strands being created in water.
Yeah, I feel like it gives a little more clarity as to what's going on there. And also, this reminds me, it's specifically mentioned as Earth in the script, and there's that whole thing in interviews where Ridley Scott was like, well, it might be Earth, it might not.
Yeah, Ridley not making up his mind until the last minute.
Yeah, and I feel like it basically clarifies what the engineers do here, because in the movie it's just kind of like, well, they drop their DNA in the water, and I guess that creates life on Earth. Whereas here it's like they're definitely kickstarting evolution in a sense.
Yeah. It explains more of what comes up later. It's a lot clearer. It makes more sense.
And then it cuts forward into the future with Watts and Holloway on an underwater expedition this time, and they uncover a monolith which has an actual star map on it and writing that you find out it matches up with all these different things all over the world, and it clarifies, why they think this thing is actually a star map we can follow.
Yeah. And it's all underwater. It's a nice sort of like the submersibles meeting and scanning over it, and like oddly, way I visualized it when reading the script, there was like two eyes in the water scanning over it.
Oh yeah.
And then they join up and discuss it, and then it's revealed they're somewhere in the Mediterranean.
Somewhere in the Mediterranean, doesn't specify where, and I kind of take issue with that because the Mediterranean, as far as seas go, is fairly shallow, and I don't think there's really any deep ocean trenches in the Mediterranean, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, again, even though I'm from the UK, I don't know that much. I think you're about right. There's not that many deep. There are deep places, but not as deep as it seems to be written in the script.
And you see that there's a volcano in the background, which is also in the background of the opening.
Yeah, it's what part of what the Savage Woman sees as the volcano is obviously meant to be intended as like a weird, like a cut or time-lapse cut or something. Like
the bone to the spaceship in 2001.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where engineers in O1 Genesis kind of differ, because in O1 Genesis they dump the underwater thing and they're in like the desert somewhere.
And it's briefer in Genesis than it is in Engineers. It's like they see something in a wall and brush it away, and that's the star map.
Yeah, no, that was a budget thing, I believe. They dropped the underwater thing to keep the money in line. Of course, O1 Genesis and Engineers differ in a way that's really weird and doesn't serve much of a purpose, because And engineers, they immediately go to meet Wayland.
Yeah, on his gigantic space wheel.
Which is also from 2001.
Yeah.
But in the script, in 01 Genesis, they go and talk to this professor for a few pages, and it just feels kind of redundant, because it's just explaining stuff that otherwise would be explained in the Wayland scene.
Yeah, I think it's like the characters like Dr. Church, which I wonder if that was a reference to Labyrinth, the Alien Labyrinth, the comic.
I've not read that comic, so...
That's fair enough. Yeah, and I think she's explained to have been like Holloway's teacher, who then taught Watts her theories.
Yeah, her theories were the basis of what they're doing now, and they go and prove what she was theorizing about years ago.
And it's like all her theories have now been proven after she was almost vilified by the community.
Yeah, and that scene's not great though. And so we get the Wayland scene where in Engineers they go up on a spaceship to Wayland Space Station, which is a big wheel like in 2001. And another 2001 reference is that you have Holloway playing around with a floating pen.
Yeah, that's shit. Yeah.
And you get a weird thing on the space station where they're going up in an elevator and they just randomly fuck in an elevator.
Yeah, I think even if they had made this version, I think they probably would have cut that scene.
Because it just seems like they're really hammering in that these two are together, because there was that weird bit of tension when they're in the submarine, where it's like, oh, he's distracted by her body.
Yeah. And like they're up and, yeah, it was just...
But no, they're up in Wayland's office, and they have the meeting. Now, here's a difference with 01 Genesis, is that they're not in space. They're in his office in Amsterdam.
Which again, is the most random budget-saving thing you could do.
I guess because Wayland wanted to be near the hash bars.
Yeah.
But he's Richard Wayland instead of Peter Wayland in that draft, which is an odd change.
It is a change. Again, it's a name change that must have just been to symbolize the fact that Spates was writing a different draft. That's the only thing I can think of.
And while they're there, okay, also the Wayland interpretation in this, it's almost like he's like a cowboy behind the desk or something. Like he's described as sounding very kind of rednecky.
Yeah, he is very much sort of like the cocky business owner.
And he's not Guy Pearce's Wayland in the slightest.
Oh no, I couldn't think who they would have cast for this version.
Well, I know Ridley Scott's initial casting choice for the movie was Max von Sydow before the Lindelof came up with that whole flashback scene that got cut. But I don't see von Sydow doing this version.
No. Yeah,
like
even Sydow can do the cocky redneck style-y.
Like this almost would have to be either Sam Elliott or like Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones, actually, saying on that, I could picture doing that more.
Although it's a good thing in this version if it's the Tommy Lee Jones Wayland. It's a good thing he doesn't go to the planet in this version because the engineer will get its ass kicked. But
yeah, Tommy Lee Jones from Under Siege versus an engineer.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But so they're talking, and we get introduced to David and Vickers in this scene. And Spates does this annoying thing where he insists on writing David in all caps throughout the entire script.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
to prove that he's different from the rest of them, to prove that he's so androidy.
And he doesn't explain, what the David stands for at any point, so maybe it's not an acronym.
That's probably not, actually, no.
And we have Vickers, who is a lot older, and is named Lydia Vickers, and she's not Wayland's daughter. And she's, introduced as his right hand. And what this scene is they're pitching Wayland on the concept, whether they're in space or in Amsterdam. And they're basically Holloway is explaining how they arrived at this conclusion. And he puts forward a lot of evidence and all this corroborating stuff, which really does have you kind of convinced reading it, because he talks about, this star map pops up in all these different places, and it coincides, and these depictions of the engineers all coincide with leaps forward in evolution and culture and all that, as well as a whole bunch of climatological things.
Yeah, and it all comes 15,000 years, all this stuff has happened.
Yes, and that the last time they showed up was 1,700 years ago.
That's right, yeah, something's happened to stop them from coming back.
And it does explain everything quite nicely. And it makes you see how Wayland, was sold on this. Now, that's the thing with the film, is that the way the film is set up, I find the way it just kind of cuts to them in the cave, and then cuts to them in space and have a briefing there just feels kind of redundant. I feel like you either need the Wayland scene and dump the exposition scene on the ship, cut Wayland in the cave, and just have the exposition scene on the ship.
See, a part of me would prefer the... Actually, no, I would keep the Wayland scene, not have the exposition on the ship.
Yeah, that's my preferred approach to it as well, but I'm just saying either version of that would work.
Yeah, that's true.
And of course, Wayland signs off on the project and he says, you get the discovery, you get the glory, but I get all the technology, and they're like, okay. That's
right, yeah, because they've been talking about some of the stuff he's been doing on his Mars project, the Mars terraforming project.
And it's not going very well.
No. Something's not quite working with the atmosphere.
And of course, that's setting up for much later, because the whole climate changing thing proves that the engineers were terraforming Earth. Which does have me kind of wonder, once they get to LV-426, how good their terraforming is, if they've only managed to terraform a tiny space inside of the pyramid.
That's right, yeah. We may have changed, what the planet looks like outside, but its atmosphere is rubbish.
Yeah, and so, they sign off. And interestingly enough, that bit about Wayland getting the technology is actually left out of 01 Genesis.
Yeah, because most of that scene, but cuts out that bit.
Yeah, which I guess it's to make it a surprise later on, so Watts and Holloway don't seem like quite as gullible as they were. Because, they really shouldn't be surprised about what happens later.
No. Nobody would be surprised by what happens later.
Yeah, it's kind of a useless subplot. But okay, so they end up in space. They get woken up on the Prometheus. Not the Prometheus, it's the Magellan here.
Yeah.
And the Magellan is an interesting difference, not just because of the name, but because it's described as being one of the Wayland mining ships that they just had on hand. It's not a custom-built scientific research vessel.
No, it's a ship they've taken and revamped for the purposes.
And added a luxury suite because Vickers is kind of a bitch.
Yeah, takes over one of the cargo bays so she can have all the privacy.
Yeah, and Holloway's just like, I had to cut my manifest.
Yeah, Charlie Perron would be like, I don't care.
One thing that's in Engineers that I'm glad is gone in Genesis is that they dropped the whole artsy-fartsy, oh no, it looks like a star field, but it's really the frost on the stasis tube.
Yeah, that would have been such a stupid shot. It would just be random visual for the sake of it.
And then they also leave out the really odd scene where the crew members are all perving on Watts.
It was Stilwell and Komarov.
Stilwell, Kamarov, and I think Brick and Glass are there, which are just weird names for characters.
So that's the different thing between Engineers, Genesis, and Prometheus. The crew are all named, and they all have distinct personalities.
Well, the crew are all named, and it's also made clear that there's only 4 scientists on this ship. The rest of them are just prospectors who are part of the crew.
You've got the 4 scientists, which are Watt, Holloway, Chance, and Ravel.
Who completely swapped characters in the movie. They're now crew members.
Yeah, that was just we like these names, so we'll change the characters.
And Ravel became a man. Of course, you find out that apparently Holloway and Watts were woken up last for... It's just this weird little, wrinkle in the plot that doesn't really add up to much.
Yeah, no, it's it's just mentioned, with the crew needed to acclimatize to everything before they woke up this team that had joined the ship.
Yeah, that's a little odd. And so they wake up, get introduced to Captain Yanek, who's described as having a massive mustache.
Oh yeah, he comes across very much as the old school sailor captain.
Which is what they were actually talking about in the run-up to Prometheus, about that character being, but you don't really see it in the movie.
Elba does his own take on it.
Yeah, he does his southern accent.
He just loves to do the American accent,
which he's good at. So, he did for however many years on The Wire. So,
well, yeah, and that was the first thing I saw him in, and I thought he was American until
I've still not seen The Wire. The first thing I saw him in was season 5 of The Office.
I didn't know he was in that.
Yes, he plays Michael's arch nemesis. It's actually pretty funny. It was funny because seeing him in that and then watching Thor, and then Prometheus. It's like, oh wow, Charles Minor has gone a long way. But so we get introduced to all of the crew, except Fifield and Milburn, who come out of goddamn nowhere later on in the script.
Yeah, they're suddenly like in the canteen sort of bit or whatever, they're just there.
And you get the briefing on the ship, which is not in Genesis, but it's here. And it's here specifically because Vickers said, I can't be bothered explaining things to these people.
Yeah, because she just doesn't really want to be there at all.
But that's like, I feel like, should have been like hinted at a little more in the film, because I always assumed that the people on the expedition were kind of stupid because Vickers didn't give a shit.
No, she didn't.
And so you get the whole scene with Vickers in her luxury suite, and you get the clunky setup for the med pod.
Yeah,
where it's like, oh hey, look at this thing that will most definitely be important later on.
There's only 4 of these on Earth. Well, 3 about now.
And it's a much different scene. Like, you don't get the whole "you will not make contact" thing, which didn't make any sense anyways. I will say this: that is one thing I like better about. I like both Yannick and Vickers a lot more in Prometheus than I do in the script.
They do seem a lot more expanded and a lot more human, I think, in Prometheus.
Which, granted, Vickers goes absolutely nowhere and is literally a flat character by the end.
Yeah.
But I mean, she felt like she had more of a presence to her. Yeah. And here she's just kind of a whiny bitch for most of it, like, complaining about everything.
Well, yeah, it's because, like, it's the whole thing about how she was next in line to take over from Wayland, and now she's out of the running completely.
I mean, it's not like they're going to be gone that long either. It's only like a 2.5-year trip either way, so she could easily get back up to speed.
Well, yeah, exactly, and considering how Wayland's age in the script, he may still be alive by this point.
Yeah, he feels like he's not like the physically weak guy. Like, he's a lot more like he's pretty old, but he's all together.
He's sort of pretty robust in that regard, yeah.
And so after that happens, they approach, the Zeta Reticuli system, and they start scanning all the different planets. And while I do appreciate that they didn't know exactly where they were going immediately, I do feel like this was a part where Spates fell a little too in love with the technobabble, because it just kept going on for ages. Like, you could montage this.
Well, in Engineers, it's like they search each planet one by one, and it's like this half-page sequence for each.
Yeah, it got a little ridiculous. Like, this is something which, in a film, you could just montage right through it.
In which he did in the Genesis version of the script.
And then, okay, so
then cut back, and it's just like, oh, we've done all this. Then we get to the final planet.
So they find LV-426, and there's this hilarious part right before they find it in Genesis where Holloway goes to Vickers, goes, we might have gone to the wrong reticuli star, and she goes like, oh, really?
Our maths may be wrong.
And she goes like, no, we're not going over there. That adds a year to the trip. So no, they touch down on LV-426. Mostly without incident in Engineers. In Genesis, there's this random mention of them hitting a force field.
Yeah, that seems to be also seems to be very throwaway in that regard.
And it's like they don't ever mention it again.
No, it's just, oh, we've hit something, oh, it's force field, oh, now it's not there.
And then so they're flying around, they fly over a mountain that dwarfs Everest, and they find, the pyramids that are all in a line along the equator. And they can't at first tell that they're constructed because, they look like ragged mountains from years of erosion. And most importantly, they are actually pyramids. They're not mounds. They're not the Harkonnen castle that you threw in for no reason.
No, they are specifically built as pyramids. They're there. They make sense to be called that.
And so they get there, they find one pyramid that they decide to go to, and then they put the expedition. It's while the expedition's getting put together that Fifield and Milburn just show up out of thin air.
It's like maybe they were actually the last ones to be waken up from cryo. Oh, we forgot about these two.
And the whole pyramid thing, this is one thing that's improved in the final movie, is that I like the fact that it's on a different planet. Because if you watch it, Alien, and definitely for Aliens, you're wondering, how did they not notice all these massive pyramids on the equator?
True, yeah, even with Aliens, it being a shake and bake colony, considering they've done scouting out further and further, they would have eventually found something in Aliens.
And also in Alien, why don't they notice the pyramid right next to the derelict ship?
Yeah. But I'd say maybe they could cover that with the storm in that regard.
Maybe. So yeah, they get out there, they go to the pyramid, and they start wandering around, and most of the same stuff happens, just the rooms are different, and they happen in a different order. Like, they find the big hole in the ground that proves that there's terraforming, which is, instead of being the first thing they find, it's like one of the last things. And you get, instead of getting spooked by the dead body, Fifield gets spooked by the holograms, which are kind of not really that big of a deal in this. Like, they're just sort of there.
Yeah, it's like they just accidentally activated something and it runs, and it's like they're all staring at it, apart from David, who's like, "Oh, this looks awesome." It runs through him.
Yeah, and it's like they're acting like they've never seen holograms before, ever.
But oh my god, it's alive!
Like, it's a ghost, and then Fifield decides to leave, and Milburn says he's going to go with him because of the buddy system.
Yeah.
That's actually a fairly good explanation right there for why he goes with him.
Yeah, rather than them just going off. He's like, hell with this, I'll go with him.
So they wander off, and eventually, Holloway leads, the rest of the group to the center of the pyramid, where they find the terraforming technology, which is a big, massive crystal, and there's some technobabble later on as to how it works. And they find the shaft, go down the shaft, and they find, the headless engineer, who's already headless. Actually, here, it's like he's partially headless, I think.
Yeah, I think it's still attached under something.
It's a Pez dispenser.
Yeah, that's right.
And they see the big pile of bodies through further on down the hallway. And that's the moment when Yannick calls up and says, "Oh wait, there's a problem in Engineers that happens here, where it's mentioned that David stays upstairs with the terraforming technology, and Chance and Ravel stay with him. Only when it cuts to Holloway and the rest downstairs, suddenly I forget if it's Chance or Ravel, but one of them is down there with them. It's like, oh wait, Spate's got his names confused.
Yeah, it had a tendency to do that in a few of the scripts.
Yeah, it doesn't happen in Genesis, but that gets fixed in Genesis, and also Genesis fixes the Engineers thing where Milburn and Fifield come out of nowhere. They get introduced earlier. Yeah, because there's only a little bit more left. Yeah. There's only one more major difference left, but okay, so they get the call from Yannick saying, hey, there's a silica storm coming in, and it immediately cuts to them and the car is driving off, which is much superior to the pointless added tension of the transport just leaving.
That's right, yeah, it's just actually cut. There's no guards, they just know they've got to get back to the ship in time.
And as it goes on, we get, it cuts between, science-y stuff on the ship, and Fifield and Milburn wandering around lost. And the science-y stuff on the ship is interesting because they don't randomly blow up the head. It starts rotting in the atmosphere, and so they dunk it in formaldehyde, and then Watts, for whatever reason, takes its eyes out and makes Guillermo del Toro goggles out of them, which she uses later.
Yeah. But doesn't the formaldehyde also then start to rot it a lot quicker as well?
A little bit, but the head is still there at the end.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. It's just, I think once you take the eyes out, it affects a little bit, and then it's not really mentioned again.
Yeah, and it's because, and the eyes, the whole thing is that they see different, layers of energy and whatnot, and that has some interesting ideas. I don't know if it would quite work because David can see all this stuff. And eventually Watts can see it. There's this thing later on where David is doing jazz hands in the air, trying to make the technology work. But no, while this is going on, you have David explains to Vickers about the terraforming technology, and she goes and wakes up the secret mercenaries, who are a secret because who knows why.
Yeah. Again, it's just so she can take over in that regard. And having them be mercenaries is a lot better than the reveal of Wayland being suddenly on the ship.
I don't think either of them works completely. This is just kind of I don't see why you need the mercenaries, because all they do is make the cast bigger.
That's true, but yeah, again, cause in Prometheus, a lot of them are just unnamed red shirts who get it in a variety of different ways.
Yes, and I feel like the company stuff gets a little too mustache twirly here, because you find out about Protocol 2, where not only do they go and take the technology out, and they just start chainsawing it out of the walls, so they probably broke it and it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But they also have to make sure that Holloway and Watts don't return to Earth and tell anybody, because that would be a problem.
Yeah,
I mean, they already agreed to let Wayland have the technology. I don't see why that would be an issue.
Nah, I guess Vickers probably just, knew she'd get it in the neck from them because, but you're spoiling everything else we'd be looking at. It's like, who cares? Yeah.
Well, frankly, if she was smart, she would have let them study it first, that they knew how the damn thing worked before they started taking it to pieces with diamond-tipped chainsaws.
Yeah, that's right. You start cutting like what they think is superfluous away from it.
But no, while all that stuff is happening on the ship, we keep cutting back to Milburn and Fifield, who end up in the insect chamber, which I don't know if that means it's a special chamber, or if that's just how Spates distinguished it from the other rooms in the pyramid. That's just the label he gave it. But
possibly, yeah. Most likely is, considering, what happens with, the centipede.
Yeah, and that comes with, the hammerpede's in this, and it's not explained, comes right the fuck out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then it's described as being much smaller and non-aggressive, so it makes sense why Milburn is handling it. And so it kills
on him.
Yeah, it just kills him basically in the way it happens. And Fifield goes running off, and apparently one of the engineers left one of their jars out in the hallway, so he knocks it over. And he gets swarmed by these scarabs that inject him with what I guess is meant to be stored xenomorph DNA.
Yeah, it's like different versions of the scarabs that we've seen earlier in the film. It's like, we've added something to this lot, we've added something to this lot.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know why the engineers were storing that shit in the hallway, but whatever.
Yeah. Also, one thing I like engineers, it did explain better why Fifield and Milburn got lost. Yeah,
they lost the map.
That's it. It's just explained in one line. I thought you had the map. No, I thought you had the map. Oh. And they got no way to contact anybody.
Yes, and then it immediately cuts to Holloway with a map, so I'm wondering, was that the only map and he just let them go running off?
Probably. If it was the Holloway from Prometheus, most likely, because he was very much an idiot.
Yes, and then also, I should mention, Holloway's quite a bit different, and he's almost the lead of the two scientists, where it seems like this is very much his project.
Yeah, like Watts is his student.
Yeah, he's quite a bit older.
Yeah.
He's quite a bit older, too. Which I remember they said they changed because they thought having, an older man, a younger woman was too creepy or something.
Yeah. A lot of the changes, but yeah.
But no, Fifield gets injected with this stuff. And then he fucks off for pretty much the entire rest of the screenplay. There's just a couple quick shots of him mutating. And so, the next morning, Vickers sends, the mercenaries and David over to start taking the thing apart with chainsaws, which is ridiculous. And then Yannick leads the rest of the crew looking for Fifield and Milburn. And then Holloway and Watts head over there. And then they go looking around in the basement level, and Holloway, like a dumbass, gets scared by a hologram and falls down falls down.
Yeah, I think that's meant to be the shaft that he didn't fall down, that was there earlier. It's like they didn't fall down this time, but then he gets spooked the second time, just falls.
And then it closes shut. And what we end up finding out later, just to, streamline this a bit, is that he fell, and there's this weird, confusing bit where it sounds like he fell, walked around for a bit, then randomly fell on his ass and knocked himself out.
Yeah, like collapse from exhaustion or something from wandering around trying to find the crew.
And he collapses in what's called the xenomorph hatchery or incubator, where there's these weird, like sphincters on the ceiling, which then there's like this thing called a molluscoid in it, which then drops like a different kind of face hugger onto Holloway, and it like eats through his helmet.
Oh yeah, but it's sort of like slow acidic on the thing as it's like trying to get to him or something.
And it's described as being very octopus-like and attaches to his face while he's unconscious. This is one thing I don't like about this script, is that the life cycle is very sped up. Like, even when you get to the traditional xenomorphs later on, like, I can swallow it for this thing because it's different.
Yeah.
But later on, they start popping out almost immediately, and then they grow really quickly.
Yeah.
Holloway wanders around for a little, and he actually finds, the orrery, the navigation room on the Juggernaut before David does. And here it's actually revealed that is indeed a ship down there before the movie does.
That's it, because the movie reveals it when it's when it shows like the map layout or something.
Yes. Which would have been a cool reveal if they didn't show the ship in the trailer.
No, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
But then, Yadek and Watts, they do find, because they found Milburn's dead body earlier, and they couldn't find Fifield, and they find Holloway wandering around. And so they bring him back to the ship. Holloway seems to be getting better, and then they start having sex.
Yeah,
and then the burster pops out.
They get together, yeah.
Yeah, he explodes prematurely all over her.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, well they're in that post-coital glow or something, and it's like she's like looking up at him, and
she's like, oh crap! She's like, oh crap! Pull him out of me! Pull him out of me!
Yeah. Oh yeah, he starts convulsing, and then it's just.
Yeah. And then you have a weird, boneless, squid-like chestburster running around, and this could have been a pretty good scene.
I thought it sort of like slinkers off, and because and the rest of the crew come running in after hearing her screams.
Yeah, she hides in the locker and it tries to get in under the locker.
That's right.
And it's like squeezing its way in, and then as the rest of the crew comes, it heads down the drain. And so they start, the crew. So we get very alien-like stuff with the crew and the mercenaries hunting, the beluga morph, as it was called in the production. And there's concept art of it. It looks really cool.
That's right. Yeah, they all pair off. You get a member of the crew with a mercenary each going off searching different parts of the ship.
And I should mention the captain of the mercenaries and engineers is Captain Shepard, which is probably a Mass Effect reference. And then in Genesis, he's Captain Batty. And I can only imagine Ridley Scott looked at that and went, what the hell?
Yeah, I'm already done with Blade Runner. I'm
going to give it to some Canadian dude to direct instead, mate, while I smoke my cigars. But yeah, so they're going around hunting it. There's a scene where they're hunting it in the condensation pool underneath the engine or whatever. And Batty in Genesis and a different mercenary in Engineers gets killed by it. And as it's fading off into the shadows, you see a hint of Holloway's face inside its head.
Yeah, which I actually thought would be a really sort of creepy visual.
It would have been creepy. It would have been creepy. Kind of borders on resurrection territory, though.
Mm. Maybe that's probably why they cut it then, because they didn't want to reference that film in there.
In that bit, the beluga morph kind of gets all T-1000-y and drips out of a pipe. Because it has no bones.
No, that's what it just sort of it is very T-1000, where it's just sort of this blob sort of thing that then, when it comes out of things, it fully forms.
And there's a scene where one of the crew members finds it in a pipe and he gets pulled in and sprayed out all over the place, which was a neat moment. And also that moment when they're in the condensation pool, one of the mercenaries accidentally kills one of the crew members, and it's kind of funny.
That's right, he's shooting at it, and it moves, and he just keeps shooting even though it's sort of not there, and just oh my god, no.
And while all this is going on, you got Watts wandering around underneath the pyramid, finding, the molluscoids and all that. And she ends up finding the Juggernaut. And she goes inside it, and the different it's like 3 different chambers that got combined into one in the movie, because you have the pilot room, the navigation room, and the cryostasis room.
Yeah.
But she goes into the navigation room to try and figure out what's going on, and that's when David shows up, and he's in full Bond villain mode. He chases her down, knocks her out, takes her into the egg chamber, and there's a bit where he mentions that studying Holloway's research, he had to think in trinary, and that freed him from his ethical constraints, which makes no sense.
It wrote his programming, which it seems, even though it's meant to change his character, he's meant to be more, it seems so out of character.
Yeah, it does. And then he just becomes Bond villainy. He takes a face hugger out of one of the eggs, and it's the same egg chamber from Alien, even with the mist and stuff. And he forces it onto her, and he's petting it like it's a cat and all that.
That's right. Yeah, he's got it held gently in its hands. It doesn't want me. I don't have the materials it needs.
And honestly, I like David a lot more in the movie too. But she wakes up. This is the life cycle being completely sped up. She goes back to the Magellan, jumps in the fucking med pod, and it actually peels the face hug, the chest burster out of her, and is like stitching her back up, and it like escapes through a drain and starts growing inside Vickers' suite.
1 second, Bruce. Okay, sure. Yeah. Alright, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I'm back, Bruce.
Okay, it grows. It starts growing, and this thing grows really quickly and unbelievably.
Yeah, Watts is trapped in the pod, watching it just sort of grow outside.
Yes, and when Space was describing this in an interview around the time Prometheus came out, it sounded really cool because it sounded like it was this gradual sequence of her watching this thing outside the pod, but reading it in the script, it happens really quickly.
It's very much real time that it happens.
It's too quick, and then one of the mercenaries for some reason decides to break into the suite. He's named Vigoda, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then the alien kills him and starts eating him, and you get to see the bit where like the chest burster turns into the adult, and you see like the head break off from the rest of the neck, which I thought was kind of cool.
Mm.
But no, it's fully grown, and his gun has fallen into the medical room. Watts gets out of the pod and like shoots it, and it's dead. Bye, alien!
Bye, alien, yeah.
Same time next week.
Folks. That's it.
That was so completely pointless. All this build up, and the med pod thing was what Spates took to the room and got him his interviews. And it just seems kind of obligatory here. The alien gets killed, and you get the terrible one-liner where she tells Yannick, I brought it in. I took it out.
Yeah. I brought it into this world. I took it out.
Yeah, and I like how, I do like how gruesome, like, the stitching back together sounds. Like, it sounds like it really kind of takes it out of her.
Really sort of like intense little sequence, yeah.
And so she leaves the suite, and she's walking around in the hallways, and the thing is like and the place is like completely messed up. It's like, oh yeah, there's another alien running around in here. we kind of forgot about that when we were dealing with, Bond villain face huggers and med pods and all that. And so she meets Yannick, and she meets with Vickers, and it turns out David has locked them out of the computer so they can't take off. And they actually have a fairly smart plan to getting rid of it, just dumping out every compartment one at a time.
Oh, that's so they're like locking off each section and sucking the air out.
And so Watts is like, well, we have to go get David and stop him because, weirdly enough, because he says like, oh, their course was headed for Earth and they were going to dump the eggs on Earth. And what's weird about that is that it seems like he's going to start it up and cause that to happen. Then later on, he's like, oh no, we have to stop the engineer. So it's like, why?
Breaking his program, probably the way that's
working. And so they take Vickers with them along with Shepard, who's one of the mercenaries, and so they head out into the pyramid. They find that Chance and Ravel have been chest bursted in this time. One of the regular aliens shows up, and Shepard, it's either Shepard or Ray kills it.
I think
really easily.
I think it's Ray who kills it, because Vickers is keeping Shepard so close to her as like the bodyguard.
Yeah, so Ray kills it once again, another original alien that's killed off like that. This is the definition of cannon fodder xenomorphs.
Oh,
and while all this other stuff is happening, we get a quick shot of the other alien, and then the mutated Fiefield's hands come in and snap its neck like he's Steven Seagal or something.
It's Michael Jai White from Universal Soldier: The Return. The hands just pop out, snap, there you go.
It's like, wow, the original xenomorphs are bitches in this. Like, they just get taken out like that. And so we get them going, and they end up in the cryostasis chamber inside the Juggernaut, and David wakes it up, and it's like, oh, you son of a bitch, I have a chest burster inside me, fuck you, and rips his head off.
Yeah, you've killed me.
And so there's a bit of a fighting scene where they're going from room to room, and then the engineer jumps into a contraption on the wall and gets, his jockey suit put on, and he starts shooting like invisible missiles out of his nipples, and
oddly, I did actually laugh at that, the way it was described in the script when I first read it.
Because it just sounds like they're getting taken out by thin air, which is just weird.
Because this is the part where they pretty much just wipe out any superfluous character that they could.
Yes, and while this is going on, Vickers and Shepard have fucked off, and they run into mutated Fifield, whom in his only appearance in this. And what's interesting here is that it's implied that there's some of Fifield's mind left in there, because he looks at Vickers and goes, you.
Yeah, and then keep that little bit of hatred for the businesswoman.
And he's like, and Shepard, goes to shoot it, but he's too slow, so he gets pounced and mortally wounded. And then Fifield is hanging over. He's also much more mutated than he is in the movie. It's much more like that concept art and a little closer to the alternate scene.
Yeah. And sort of, yeah, because he then jumps on Vickers and sort of like is on top of her trying to get at her.
And then Shepard shoots him and kills it, and the acid blood spills on her and dissolves her.
Yeah. Which I think
was a
from
scene.
Requiem, but you could actually
Yes, I was going to say that.
Version.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That exact same death scene happens in Requiem. And yeah, these characters all kind of wasted here. Like, Vickers doesn't really do much except whine and complain. Fifield, like, fucks off into the pyramids, like, colon for a while, and then comes back just to die and kill her.
Yeah.
I think as not great as the editing on that scene is in the movie, I think it's a better use of the mutated Fifield because he actually does something.
Yeah, he does just that little bit more, yeah.
And so, the engineer gets in the pilot seat, and he's going to go take off for Earth, and Shaw gets away, leaving David's head behind. And what's weird about David's head here is that it's described as he dies, but then his head just comes back to life later.
Yeah, it seems like secondary battery or something that suddenly decides it's going to spark into life.
Yeah, it's not really explained, and so Watts gets off the ship, she makes it back to the Magellan again, and she says, and like Fifield is like, not a Fifield, I mean Yannick is there, and the Beluga morph like creeps down behind him and bites him on the shoulder, and this is how shitty this alien is, that it has him in his hands and can't kill him.
It was completely stupid.
And then Watts just shoots it and kills it, so once again, another alien without much.
It's just like they could have easily done it in a completely different universe, this version of the script.
Yes, even the movie they made, they could have. Okay, so Yannick, his arm is fucked up, so he can't aim the ship anymore.
No.
Which it's established that pretty much everybody is dead at this point, which is kind of funny because in the movie it's like, yeah, there's those two guys on the bridge who want to go with Yannick.
Yeah.
But it's like there has to be about like 12 other guys on the ship that Yannick just decides to sacrifice.
Yeah, it's like, I'm the captain, I'll make the choice for them.
and so she helps guide Yannick in piloting the ship into the Juggernaut. And it doesn't explode on impact.
No, because yeah, that's right. The Juggernaut slows down because the alien is actually bursting out of the engineer at this point.
Yeah, the Ultramorph.
Oh, that's the Ultramorph. I love that name actually.
I think that's a little silly, and the fact they're continuing off that naming scheme with the Neomorph. I mean, if this thing can't see the Matrix and fighting bullet time, like, don't call it the Neomorph.
Yeah.
But okay, so it bursts out, and it's like David's communicating, saying you only have so much time before the computers take over, and so they crash into the Juggernaut, and the Magellan starts breaking into pieces. Yannick gets killed by a piece of glass, and then
a large shard of the windshield that like pierces him or something.
Yes, and then Watts gets into the small escape thing, like Vickers does in the movie, and so she's running away from the crashing ship on the ground, and she actually does run to the side of it.
Yeah, no Prometheus school of running away from things here.
Yes, and so the ship crashes, she's like, we're okay, and then the Ultramorph, which is somehow already fully grown, pops out and starts stalking her.
They really, in these films, they really have no idea about the cycle or the timeline of the cycle.
And what's weird about it, right, is that the Ultramorph is like, it's actually a fairly suspenseful scene when it's stalking her and she's like trying to find her. But then when she actually has to confront it, she just really easily kills it with one of those chainsaws.
Oh yeah, the diamond chainsaw.
So it's like, yeah, all the build-up, all the mystery over the years of people wondering what came out of the space jockey, and it's this weird thing that's designed to look like one of Giger's paintings. And they give it eyes for some reason, and then you're like, oh, she just kills it with a chainsaw. Like, I would expect a jockey alien to be a little more, robust than that.
Well, yeah, you think it would take, like, she'd have a gun and the chainsaw or something.
Yeah, something like that. Like, she'd actually have to struggle against it. This thing pops out when there's like 5 pages left in the script, for those of you listening.
Yeah, oddly, after a certain point, the film does move along very quickly.
And she kills it. She finds, Vickers, like her luxury suite, which is its own life pod. that she's in, and she nails the fucking Ultramorph's head to above the doorway, which is just hilarious. And so she's sitting there playing remote chess with David's head that she just left in the Juggernaut, I believe.
Yeah, no, it's still just sat there, and because he sprung back into life and is now talking to her over the radio.
And she's like, "Oh, someone will come for me," and then the pyramids all light up like a fucking Vegas show, and then the ending.
Yeah, who will come first, them or us?
That's another reason why putting it on another planet makes more sense to this, because, okay, you got all the fucking Magellan wreckage, you've got her little survivor hidey hole there, and you got all the pyramids lighting up. How did the Nostromo not see any of that? How did Hadley's Hope not find any of that?
Really bad at their jobs, probably.
Yeah, they're just incompetent, like the usual Weyland-Yutani nonsense.
Oh,
so yeah, that's Engineers in Genesis, and they're both, fine scripts.
They are in the, as you said earlier, they're like the fourth and fifth drafts.
And the thing with this is that I feel like I can see why Lindelof looked at this and said, it's leaning too hard on alien tropes that don't really serve the story, but I think he went kind of in a lateral direction that wasn't really necessary with his thoughts on it. I think reducing the number of aliens in this, because as Alien shows, having lots of aliens isn't a problem. It's just they're all given like this huge amount of build-up, and they all kind of like steal each other's screen time and don't really do much.
Yeah, they're all gone within like half a page of being introduced.
And as much as everybody was in love with the MedPod idea, maybe cut that alien out of the movie, like cut that whole thing, like just focus on the Beluga morph and maybe the Ultramorph at the end and Fifield.
Yeah.
Cut at least one of the aliens, and cut the two random ones at the end. They're pointless.
Yeah. Oh, look. They're just there just to say, oh, wait, maybe they're not done for. Oh, wait, no, they are. Easy snap. Yeah. Next snap. Like a Chuck Norris movie getting rid of a villain or something.
Yeah, and it doesn't quite work as a prequel also because I'm not really sure how the molluscoids relate to the eggs. Like, it's implied that the engineers took them and then turned them into the eggs. And there's a whole bunch of different kinds of eggs, but it's all really vague. And I'm like, so did the molluscoids exist naturally before the engineers made the eggs? Or did they create the molluscoids and then the eggs? And if so, where did the queen come from? And oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
Yeah. How does this work? Oh, my brain's melting.
But no, it's interesting, and I feel like if this had gotten made, I don't think it would have been quite as divisive as Prometheus was. I think it would have been, I don't think people would have been in love with it or anything, but I think it would have been less controversial.
Yeah. You had a lot more fans going, alright then, it's not as good as it could have been, but we finally got an alien movie. It's okay, yeah.
It's an okay kind of silly alien movie, but it mostly somewhat works. I wish I could read Zero just to see if he fixed any of these problems, but I kind of have my doubts.
No, I'm wondering if with Zero that was like the last straw for Ridley before he decided he was going to bring in a writer who primarily worked in TV with Lindelof.
And I'll say Lindelof, I'm only familiar with his work through Prometheus, and he rewrote the third act of Star Trek Into Darkness. I've not watched Lost. I've not seen any of the other stuff he's been involved with.
Well, did you say he rewrote the third act of Into Darkness?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, God.
Orsi and Kurtzman couldn't figure out what to do with it, so Lindelof got brought in to save it. And he did the same thing with World War Z, I believe.
Okay.
Because, Brad Pitt and the producers didn't like the ending they had, so they rewrote the third act. And brought in another doctor.
Yeah, yeah. You got to love Capaldi making his appearance.
But, yeah, so that was Alien Engineers. It was interesting. Would I necessarily have preferred it to Prometheus? In some ways, definitely, because this actually is more coherent, but in other ways, it's just kind of the aliens feel obligatory and don't really do much.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing where you wish there, instead of, say, Zero or Genesis, there was, another draft that was, between Prometheus and Engineers that could, coalesce the two into one decent whole.
Yeah, but we'll never know.
No, sadly. Thank you, Ridley. Yeah. Thank you, Ridley.
Thank you, Ridley, for being a crazy dude. And I think that covers it fairly well. I mean, we had to kind of speed it up a bit there at the end because of circumstances, but But let's be honest, this was kind of a plot-heavy, not really detail-oriented script, so...
No, that's true. You could... Where we sped up, essentially that's where the film would have sped up anyway, so...
Yeah, it really sped up. So yeah, I guess that's time for us to sign off. And remember to, the links are going to be down below, so check us out on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter, and iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. And if I remember to put the Blogspot link down there, check that out. And, if you have any questions, shoot an email to screenplayarchaeology@outlook.com. And until next time, bye.
Bye, guys.